So we want to welcome you to tonight's presentation, First Tuesdays with Heart. It's supported by our Heart Pure support team in connection with the Resiliency and Justice Center, previously known as the Vegas Strong Resiliency Center. HEART stands for Healing, Empowering, and Rebuilding Together. We're a peer support program for anyone impacted by any mass violence incident. I wanted to introduce you to our team. Alice was just speaking. She's the co-director of HEART. She's also the Route 91 and UNLV support group facilitator. Jackie, who is going to be joining us a couple minutes late, is one of our original HEART coaches, and she's also the Resiliency and Justice Center's Behavioral Health Program Coordinator. And I am the co-director of HEART along with Alice. I'm a Route 91 survivor, and I also assist Alice with the UNLV support group. We shared this one last month and wanted to share it again for people who weren't able to join us. I know I really felt this after Route. I expected my healing journey to be quick and easy, and that's not at all the case. For most of us, the healing journey is a big, messy experience, but it is absolutely worth the hard work. So we usually start with some housekeeping tips. This program is intended for those directly or indirectly impacted by a mass violence incident. We want to make sure that this is a safe space for everyone. So if you are not a survivor, a family member, a friend of anybody impacted, a community responder, we would like to ask you to leave, please, just out of respect for those of us who have been impacted. We also ask that you do not share details of the discussion with anyone outside of tonight's attendees. Please feel free to share about what Andrea is going to present to us, but we don't want to share anything about the discussion because we want to make sure people are comfortable. The intention of this group is to learn and discuss our healing journey and some challenges we may encounter along the way. So we ask that nobody brings up details of their incidents because we don't want to activate anybody who may be on with us. As Alice mentioned, we'll be recording the presentation portion of tonight's meeting so that you can review it afterwards and we can share with others impacted, but we will not record the discussion portion. So feel free to just say whatever you want to say, as long as it's polite. And, it's not going to be recorded, so there's no fear of that. If you know how to raise your hand on Zoom, it's located under the reactions on the Zoom toolbar. We would really appreciate you doing that. With having all these people, with having so many people, it could really be a little bit crazy if people aren't raising their hands. If you don't know how, you can also comment in the comments that you'd like to say something. We'd really like you to please mute yourself when you're not speaking so that we don't have any interference as we're going through the presentation. And again, we don't want anything that could be potentially politics, weapons, anything like that could lead to a heated discussion. So in the chat, we would really appreciate if you let us know which event you were impacted by. We don't keep track of who was impacted by what, but we would like to know how many different incidents that we are getting to. So if you guys would please put that in now, we would appreciate it. For those of you who are just joining us, we're asking if you would please put in the chat which incident you were impacted by. And this is just so we know how many incidents that we're touching, because we'd like to get out and be able to touch as many as possible. Thank you, everyone. You can keep on putting it in there if you haven't yet. So tonight, I am personally super excited to have Andrea Morton join us. She is my personal life coach, and I actually met her because Andrea's sister is a router who I met afterwards and is now a good friend of mine. So I'm thrilled to have her with us, and I know how much help she has been for me. So I know this is going to be a great presentation. She's a certified personal life coach who holds degrees and certificates from Stanford, University of San Diego, and UCSD, as well as a life coach school. She hosts the Infinite Capacity podcast, offering tips and strategies towards people who would like additional support. She's on Instagram as Think to Thrive Coaching, where she has around 64,000 followers. And she loves writing, spending time with her kids and her husband, traveling, several other things. She, as we mentioned, it's mass violence impacted Andrea's life through her sister and brother-in-law who were at route. And she was a teacher off and on for 19 years, where she experienced multiple on-campus lockdowns. So she has a somewhat of an understanding of what the having the potential threat of an incident might have felt like.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Wow, I'm really honored by that introduction. And I just want to say how grateful I am to be here with all of you tonight. I feel really touched by the opportunity to come and share just a little bit that hopefully will be able to move even one person one step forward. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much. I don't take lightly this gift of being invited into such a sacred circle of trust and mutual respect. I know it's meant a great deal to my sister. And, so I just am really honored and I appreciate the invitation, Jill and Alice and Jackie. So thank you so much. All right. So who this topic that I'm going to be discussing tonight applies to is just about everybody. These days, I specialize in working with moms of older teens and of young adults, plus empty nesters. And that happened in a really natural and organic way because a lot of my clients who used to have younger kids, well, they simply grew up and they continued working with me as their kids became older teens and then they had empty nests. So even though I do specialize in working with women, everything that I have to share here today applies to men too. It is definitely not gender specific. And it's also not age specific. The information that I'm going to be sharing with you about rebuilding confidence, it can be implemented by anyone of any age. And you can teach the things I'm sharing with you to little children all the way to grandparents who've experienced a lot of life. So it's basically for everybody. I think Peyton's here too tonight, so it's also for puppies. Okay, so I'm first going to tell you a little bit about how this topic about rebuilding confidence connects to me personally. I don't know how old I was when I took my very first flight, but I do remember really clearly what I loved about flying with my parents when I was little. The first thing was that I got to sit between my parents, which made me feel really safe and really loved. And sometimes I even got to look out the window, which I thought was amazing as a kid to see things from up high. Because, I got to see the cars driving on the ground and I sometimes saw swimming pools in people's backyards. And I was always really curious about that because we did not have the kind of money for a swimming pool. So it was really exciting to me. And, we didn't have a lot of money to travel when I was little. So going on a flight was really special. It was something that only happened maybe once or twice a year at best. And it was something that my parents saved up for. And so I would just look forward to it like it was Christmas. Usually it was either to go see family or like my big brother who lived far away. Once we went to Nebraska, where we met my dad's remaining family because that's where he grew up. And I was so excited to visit my first farm and see how little chicks were incubated. And I remember seeing real pigs for the first time eating at a trough and thinking, wow, this is just like Charlotte's Web. So because it was so special and rare and amazing, I just loved flying. And I remember telling my mom when I was little that it was my very favorite thing to do. And so over the years, I built up a confidence that A, I loved to fly, and B, I was good at it. All right, well, I do know exactly how old I was when I lost my love of flying and when it became something that paralyzed me so totally with fear that I ultimately stopped flying altogether and I did not go on a plane for over 10 years. I was 16 and one of my closest friends was dying of ovarian cancer and she had been fighting cancer since I was 15. And that was a really terrifying experience for her friends to watch, including for me. But I only really understood finally that she would die when I was 16. And I remember telling my mom when we got on a plane to go travel east to visit my brother that I didn't know if my friend was still going to be alive when we got back to our home in San Diego. And sure enough, she did pass while we were traveling. And so I left with a friend in the hospital, someone that I loved very much, and I came home to a funeral. And that is a very core memory for me. I would say it's one of the things that have shaped my life the most. So her death, which combined with a lot of turbulence on those flights, somehow shook something that was really primal inside of me. And it was really my first huge loss. So where before the flight, there had been a sort of naive, superhuman, nothing can touch me kind of, teenagery confidence that kids sometimes have, my kids have right now. There was this gaping hole, and I began to question a lot of things, like the faith that I had been raised with, or my purpose on the planet, or what it meant that I was still here, but my friend was not. And those questions nestled down with me really deep. And for about a year, they festered. And then I left for my freshman year of college. And this was a time of great vulnerability because I was away from my support system and my family and my friends. And I was trying to navigate the real world for the first time. And it felt pretty scary and hard. And so I began to have this paralyzing fear. And then there was this series of high profile plane crashes that you probably will remember if you were alive at that time or, reading newspapers at that time. It was in the fall of 1993 and the spring of 1994. And so they made these really big headlines, and the newspapers even made it to the front porch of my dorm at college. And I remember sitting on the little floor at the bottom of the staircase while kids were passing by me on the way to get breakfast, and I'm reading those headlines, and somehow in me something just had a schism. And this death of my friend and those rough flights and this newfound sense of vulnerability at college and this understanding that I had very little control over what happened even to very good people in the world all kind of merged together in my subconscious mind. So at age 17, which is how old I was when I went to college, I lost my love of flying, and I suddenly developed a paralyzing fear of airplanes and flight. And this fear took hold inside of me at this really deep subconscious level, and it was there for about 10 years, but I was still forcing myself at that point to white knuckle the flights because, I would make these deals with myself and I would say okay, well, you only fly under these circumstances if it really matters. But it was still important to me to try to visit people and so forth. So I was still trying to make it work, even though I was just paralyzed with this terror. I'd have these terrible panic attacks. But when I became a mother at age 29, that was kind of it for me. And then the fear became overpowering. My fear of losing my kids in a crash, of losing my time with my kids if something happened to me. The fears just kind of swallowed me up. And from the ages of 29 to 40, I did not get in an airplane again, even one time. And so for nearly 11 years, my sweet husband drove me and our kids from San Diego to Vancouver, Canada, or from San Diego to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, because I was too scared to fly. So this is the part of my talk where I want to share with you about the difference between confidence and self-confidence, because it turns out that these two things are actually not the same at all, and they come from different places inside of us, and we develop them in different ways, and one of them is more easily lost than the other one, and yet one of them is the absolute key to developing and maintaining the other. Confidence is typically founded on our past experiences. It's a belief in your abilities, your judgments, your qualities, and it connects to having the assurance and trust that you will rise to the occasion and you will perform very well in a variety of scenarios because you have done so before. So a confident person typically shows assertiveness, and they feel ready to take on new challenges or adventures, and they have this optimism, the self-assurance. They don't shrink from adversity. So in my case, when I was little, as I described to you, I had a lot of confidence that I could fly because I had gone on airplanes before with my parents, And it was an experience that had always been exciting or enjoyable for me. And I knew what to expect when I was at the airport or on the plane. I had memorized the speech that the flight attendants always give about putting on your seatbelts and what to do if the oxygen mask comes down. So I was confident that I could go onto a plane and be a well mannered passenger. And I was confident that the plane would get me from point A to point B with no problem. But it turns out that confidence can be easily shaken if you don't have its stronger but more subtle sister, self confidence. Self confidence, on the other hand, it's really different. It's all about your self awareness and your self knowledge. And it's based on your belief in your own worth and your inner value. And it's about a sense of your own capacity rather than a reflection of what you've already accomplished in your lifetime. So self confidence is an inside job, and it's all about our feelings of self worth and self efficacy. So, a person who has self confidence, they feel that they can trust themselves, their own judgments, their own decision making capability, and they have a lot of inner determination and resilience. So, they know who they are and they believe deeply in their own competence. Self confidence is that inner knowing that tells you, well, even though I don't know all of the answers to these questions, and I'm about to do something that I've never actually done before, I do have absolute faith in my own ability to figure it out. So when we face serious life events or even just really big shocks or surprises that upend our worldview and they make us really reflect, it isn't necessarily our confidence that's been shaken. It's actually more likely our self-confidence that's proving to be weak in that moment. So in my case, that whole series of events that I had described to you, it actually just revealed that while I had a lot of experience with flying and I had developed confidence in my capacity to go on an airplane, what I lacked was self-confidence. So these are some crucial questions. And as I read them to you, or you can read them to yourself because they're in front of you, I'd love you to think about whether or not these apply to you or maybe someone you love. So if the questions were, do you know who you are? And do you know why you're here? And do you feel worthy? Do you know your own value? Do you feel like you have the capacity and the bandwidth to figure things out? And do you trust yourself? My answers, if I had reflected on these questions, would honestly probably have been no. So no matter how old a person is or how much experience they have, if they can't answer these 6 questions in the affirmative, not necessarily to a whole group of people, but even if it's just in the depths of their own heart, they're going to lack the self-confidence that's usually needed to overcome those inevitable hard things that life frequently throws at all of us humans. So, then they might find themselves like I did, feeling stuck and unable to fly, metaphorically or literally, to the destination of their dreams, unable to take off and soar to the journey of their lives. So I'd love to give you a second if you want to screenshot these 6 questions or jot them down because I feel like they're worthy of some real thought. And answering them right now, even if your answer is, I don't know, is actually the first step that you or somebody you love could take toward rebuilding your confidence after it's been shaken. So I'll give you just a moment if you want to just jot them down or take a quick picture, and then I'll move forward to the next slide. And I can always come back. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to rebuild confidence. And in order to do that, you're going to first need to grow or rediscover your self-confidence. And to do that, you're going to want to establish your baseline, like where you are today, and just figure out what you believe about yourself right at this moment. And that is a really good first step. Now, because my own life story is specific to me and it may not apply to you or resonate with everybody here tonight, I'd like to share with you some more reasons why folks lose confidence, because it happens for a huge number of reasons. It could come from failure or rejection, or maybe feeling that imposter syndrome that so many of us do, where we end up in a situation but don't feel like we're worthy of being there. It could be social exclusion, or maybe having a conflict with other people that makes you feel a little bit insecure. It might come from having some health issues that make it so that you can't do the things now that you used to be able to do. Could come from financial struggles, challenges at school. That happens a lot for teens. Having a personal tragedy or setback, having a relationship difficulty, perhaps you've had someone that's like cheated on you or something, and that can really shake people's confidence as well and what they thought that they knew about life or what they believed, or even just feeling disconnected from other people. So maybe some of these might connect if my personal example doesn't. And I'd also like to take a moment to extend the discussion a little bit and share a little bit more specifically tonight about 5 specific reasons why anyone who's gone through a traumatic event might also lack confidence or have had it shaken a bit. Okay, so the first one is lacking trust. And trust here is defined as a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of somebody or something. So this belief, both for ourselves and for the world, plays an important part in confidence. If you've been through a traumatic life event, you may feel that your trust either in yourself or others or in the world at large has been shattered, and you might feel a sense of betrayal, either by the event itself or by people who you trusted during the event. And this can make it harder to form new relationships, and that can affect self-confidence. So in my case, the loss of such a close friend at a relatively young age, which coupled with those plane crashes, caused me to stop trusting that good things do happen to good people and that the universe was always working in my favor. And losing that trust in myself and in the world, it played an important part in losing confidence. The next one is negative self-perception. So what do I mean by that? Well, this can be defined as a distorted self-view where individuals perceive themselves in a predominantly negative light. So negative self-perception can make it harder for people who have gone through an event to see themselves or their own capacity clearly. So they might be working through feelings of shame or self-blame or guilt, and that can impact their self-esteem because individuals sometimes take on a belief that they're somehow responsible for the event or unworthy of love and support after an event, and this too can shake their confidence. And only you can know how that might apply to your life, but for me, it does hold true. I did feel incredibly guilty that my close friend, who I told you about, got cancer in high school. And so while I got to go with my then boyfriend to the junior and the senior prom, and I was dressing up in sparkly dresses and laughing and out having fun, she was in the hospital dealing with chemo, and she was really suffering. And we talked all the time. So even though I knew in my thinking brain that I didn't cause my friend's cancer, there was some part of me deep down that felt unworthy of having so much fun and happiness when my friend was suffering so greatly. So for me, the negative self-perception was very much true. And then the next one is negative self-talk. So going through a traumatic event can lead to an increase in negative self-talk, catastrophizing, or even black and white thinking. And our perceptions of the world around us can become distorted, and they can lean toward more the negative side. And that can make us feel less able to deal with our day-to-day reality or tackle new projects and new goals. And that negative self-talk doesn't always look like always just cutting yourself down, although it can look like that, or even diminishing your own potential. But sometimes it looks like talking yourself out of doing something that you actually really want to do. So I've got a variety of examples of negative self-talk. And, the more stereotypical ones would be things like, oh, I can't believe I did that. How could I be so stupid? Or I can't do anything right today. Or, oh, I look so stupid in this outfit. Or, that kind of thing. But then there's another kind of negative self-talk. Oh, well, they'd never give me that job, or I'm not qualified, so I might as well not apply for that. Or, well, we're probably going to break up anyway. That person probably doesn't really love me, so I might as well just end things right now. And that's a kind of negative self-talk too. So I definitely dealt with a lot of catastrophizing thoughts after my dear friend got sick. And every time I got a little lump anywhere under my skin, even if it was just from like a mosquito bite, there was a tiny little part of my brain that would whisper, what if it's cancer? And the world around me suddenly began to take on this really scary kind of tone and feel really unpredictable. And it made me less likely to want to take risks. So I started to put my head down rather than raising my hand when new opportunities came up. For example, and this one still really hurts to this day, there was a family whose kids I had tutored and babysat for, and they liked me. And so they asked me when I finished college if I would come with them on like what for me would have been the trip of a lifetime to Europe to babysit their kids for a week while the parents went off and traveled alone and I took care of the kids. It was going to be in Paris. And I mean, I had never been given such an incredible offer before, but I turned it down. And the reason I turned it down is because I was terrified, as I'm sure you guessed, by the flight, and I didn't want to risk having a panic attack in front of them. And so, as I was talking the thing over in my head to myself, I was thinking, oh, I'm probably going to embarrass myself like terribly in front of this family, and I'm probably going to have a panic attack. And then they're probably going to be like really shocked, and they're not going to want me to watch their kids. And they might not ever even hire me again. So I better not accept. So, see how my negative self talk made me feel insecure. And so that led to a lack of that confidence. Now, the next one is loss of control. So feeling like you've lost control can also cause a loss of confidence. And people who've been through a really traumatic event often do feel powerless because they couldn't control the event or the circumstances that were unfolding all around them. And this feeling of being out of control can erode a person's sense of being able to protect themselves or navigate the world safely. And this is probably the biggest reason why I lost all that joy in flying that I'd had and why I stopped traveling, even though traveling was my favorite thing to do. Because after my friend died and those plane crashes happened, I lost the sense that I would be able to protect myself in any situation and that I would be able to travel the world safely. And so my brain began to notice like things that I wouldn't have noticed before. I began to notice newspaper articles that talked about bad things that happened to young ladies that were traveling or, other just random things that happened. And my brain started to conjure up hypothetical situations where I would ask myself, well, what would I do if X next thing happened? And then I would get more nervous because I would think, oh gosh, I don't think I can handle that. So, since I can't control that, I'd better stay home. And so as things progressed, my circle got narrower, right? Because the only thing that began to feel like it kept me safe was just staying at home with my kids. But you can see that's not very healthy where I was at. And the last thing that I wanted to share about this is social withdrawal. So, survivors of events often find that, at least for a while, they do feel like withdrawing socially. They don't feel like going out as much anymore because people going through a challenging life transition often feel that other people are just not going to understand or be able to connect with what they've experienced or what they're still experiencing. So they just avoid social events. And this can actually make the person who's doing the avoiding feel really lonely. And it can cause them to wonder about their own inherent worth because they're creating an isolation, right? A distance between themselves and others that maybe that they've loved spending time with. And if they don't have that social support and that validation as they're working to heal, it can be really hard to have the confidence to put themselves back out there into the world to connect with others. After my friend died, I just had a really hard time for a while getting together with other kids my age. And it just seemed really wrong and unfair to me that life just kept on going for the rest of us, even though she was no longer here. And I was honestly annoyed by all of the kids at my high school who suddenly acted like they'd known her really well or they'd been close friends with her when I knew that they had mainly avoided her and judged her before she had the cancer, or even when she did come to school and she had to wear a wig and she had bruises all over her legs. And, people talked badly. So I was really frustrated to be around those people after that time. And I didn't feel like talking about the situation with anyone who hadn't known her, like really known her. So I ended up again drawing my circle really close. And it did create a stronger bond for me with certain people that had really known her. Like one of them in particular is still my best friend to this day, and she was the maid of honor in my wedding. But in general, the social withdrawal was a painful thing and did not help with confidence. So traumatic events, let's just review the 5 things. They can lead to lacking trust, a negative self-perception, a negative self-talk, a loss of a sense of control in the world, or social withdrawal. So we've discussed a lot of things so far. We've discussed there's a difference between confidence and self-confidence. We've discussed this crucial importance of developing self-confidence and 5 additional important factors that can cause people who've survived an event to lose confidence. So now the question becomes, if I'm a human who has gone through a crisis of confidence for any reason at all, how can I rebuild it? How do I take those first steps forward to become the person that I'd most like to be now in the after? So I'm going to give you 7 strategies today that you can follow. And Jill will also be sharing a list of resources that you can turn to in order to build your confidence. And so that'll be sent out. But I'm going to start here with the very first strategy. So the very first way you can begin to rebuild your self-confidence is by starting with self-compassion. And making self-compassion a daily practice, sometimes hourly, is actually really important, even if that's all you can do for now. And self-compassion is about learning how to talk to yourself and treat yourself with kindness and understanding rather than offering yourself a harsh self-critique. And you may not even be aware that you've been doing that, but really starting to listen to how do you talk to yourself? How do you think about yourself? And on purpose, being a little more compassionate. Setbacks, even really, really tough ones, are a natural part of being a human. And self-compassion is all about acceptance, especially when you're struggling or suffering. And it's all about treating yourself with the same kind of care and warmth and support that you would give to a dear friend or somebody that you love. So being able to acknowledge and validate your own pain and imperfections from like a very gentle and non-judgmental and compassionate place, that's super important. And try to work on seeing your common humanity and being mindful of the way that, you're treating yourself. You need to look for your own worth, even if you only see the tiniest little spark, but notice it and acknowledge it and build from it. And you need to build that positive relationship with yourself. So one strategy that you can use to work on this is to journal about your own positive traits or qualities that you appreciate in yourself. And maybe write down, like, what's one thing I did this week that I'm really proud of? Or what's one good thing about myself that I know to be true? And then just look for those reasons to try to love on yourself a little bit. The second strategy, and you're doing it right now, is to seek social support. Because when you're trying to rebuild self-confidence, it can be so helpful to surround yourself with trusted family members or friends or teachers or mentors or peers who can just offer you validation and encouragement and perspective. And by sharing your struggles with people that you trust, that can help lighten any of those feelings of isolation that we talked about before. And it can help you to see that other people have also gone through tough times and they've made it to the other side. And that can be really inspiring. And by hearing their stories and then talking openly about your own story, you're going to develop a greater sense of connection and belonging within a community because you do belong. And then coming to meetings like this one, First Tuesdays with Heart, is a great way for you to develop that sense of community with people who really truly understand to a great degree what you've experienced and what you may be feeling right now. So social support, cannot emphasize that one enough. It's crucial. The next thing is to challenge your negative thinking. And there are a lot of different ways of doing this. You can use cognitive behavioral techniques. You can Google them if you're looking for some. You can ask any of us. I'm sure that Jill and Alice have a ton that they could share. And you can challenge and reframe your thinking in a way that might be undermining your self-confidence without you realizing it. So if you notice yourself engaging in any of that negative self-talk or feeling self-doubt, you can see if you can challenge those thoughts. And here's one great way you can do that is by asking yourself to give evidence. Or you can contradict the thought, and this can confuse the brain in a good way. You can ask your brain to now give the opposite point of view, from the negative self-talk that it's been creating. So if you found yourself saying something to yourself like, oh, I'm so dumb, I can't believe I did that, take a pause and then actively challenge your brain to give you 3 to 5 reasons why you're actually really smart and why you do great things all the time. So that is a really useful strategy. We use that a lot in coaching. Okay, now the next thing that I love and really great strategy is to practice visualizing and generating positive imagery. So you want to make a habit of imagining yourself successfully overcoming your challenges, whatever they are, and achieving your goals. And you can actually practice, like in your mind's eye, watching yourself doing the things that you doubt you can do and doing them successfully and calmly. And you can close your eyes if you want to or keep them open, but just really visualize yourself doing it well and rehearse it consistently. Practice that mental imagery. There's actually a lot of research out there that shows that if you regularly visualize your own success, this is actually something that can strengthen both your self-confidence and your inner resilience. And it's mental rehearsal is this technique that world-class athletes and even medical professionals, they use it consistently in their own work so that they can be ready to jump in and problem solve on the go. And there's this study that I love to tell people about. It was conducted at the University of Chicago in 1996, and it was all about visualization. And so in this study, they asked this group of students that were just randomly selected, they weren't anybody in particular, to take a series of free throws. And so then they tallied up how many people were actually able to make the free throw, how many shots did it take, and so forth. And then they divided the students into 3 different groups, and they asked them to perform 3 different tasks over the next 30 days. So the first group was told, do not touch a basketball for 30 days, no practicing, no playing whatsoever. The second group was told that they needed to practice shooting free throws every day for a half an hour for 30 days. And then the third and final group was told to come to the gym every day for 30 days, but they weren't going to pick up a basketball. They simply needed to spend a half an hour with their eyes closed, visualizing, sorry, I can't even talk, visualizing themselves hitting every single free throw correctly. So their job was just to visualize it. And so after 30 days, the 3 groups were asked to come back, and then they were given the opportunity to take the exact same number of free throws that they'd been given the chance to take originally. And so the first group of students who hadn't practiced at all, they showed no improvement. They were basically at the same place that they were 30 days before, which kind of makes sense. They hadn't done anything. The second group that had been there and had come to the gym and had actually physically practiced making the free throws for 30 minutes a day for 30 days, they did pretty well. They showed a 24% improvement. That's awesome. But the last group that was just visualizing 30 minutes a day, the free throws, didn't pick up a basketball, they showed a 23% improvement. So isn't that amazing? The measured improvement in that third group who just visualized their success was virtually the same as those who had actually been there doing the physical activity. And if it can work for them, it can work for you too. So that is a great strategy that I hope that you will practice. Visualize yourself being successful. It's going to build that confidence. Okay, now the next one is to care for your physical health, which of course is so important. And it might go without saying, I'm sure you've heard it from lots of other speakers, but getting enough sleep at night, eating a healthy diet, and exercising are all crucial factors that are going to help you create a healthy outlook and a healthy body. And that physical exercise will not only boost your mood, but it's also going to help improve your self-confidence and reduce any feelings of stress or anxiety that you might be dealing with. So taking care of yourself physically is really a win-win because it's good for your body, but it's also really good for your confidence. Next, you're going to want to set some smaller goals. I think this is something that is a trap that people often fall into is they have really big goals. I'm going to get back out there. I'm going to do the big thing. It's going to happen. And then when it doesn't happen, it just actually kind of bounces back upon them and they feel, like a lot worse. And, think, oh gosh, see, I tried and I couldn't do it. It was a fail. But no, really what we want to do is start small. We want to set small goals and focus on your successes. So break down those larger goals into smaller, achievable steps. And this is a fantastic way to gradually rebuild your self-confidence. For example, if you want to do a rough water swim in the ocean, but maybe you're not a very strong swimmer, start by taking a swimming lesson at the local public pool, and then congratulate yourself for showing up at the lesson. Great job. You put on your swimsuit. You were in the pool for the whole duration of the class. You listened to the teacher. These are all things that you should really congratulate yourself for. You can celebrate every little milestone along the way. and just show yourself all of those unsung hero moments in your life that maybe you are normally ignoring. Just being consistent is actually something that you should hugely celebrate. And don't forget to also reflect upon your past achievements and strengths and successes, even if they're tiny. And you can consider keeping a journal of all of your accomplishments, great or small. And that way you could remind yourself about your abilities and your resilience. And that's a really great thing. If you have a journal of your wins, even if it's just a little win at a time, that's a nice thing to reread from time to time to help build up that self-confidence. Oh yeah, I forgot I did that thing last year. Oh, I forgot about that thing 3 months ago. I did do that, and it really makes you feel better. And the last strategy, and perhaps the most important of all, is to seek professional help if you need it. And if you find that there's a lack of confidence that's having a really big impact on your daily life or on your mental health, absolutely seek the help and support from a qualified therapist or a counselor. And I bet the Resiliency Center has a lot of resources that they could give for that to everybody here. They're going to be able to, a therapist or a counselor is going to be able to provide you with strategies or resources that are personalized to your unique situation and your needs, and it will help be able to guide and support you as an individual along your journey. And that tailoring is crucial. So I know that you're going to find that if you rebuild your self-confidence, you will soon be undertaking challenging and exciting activities that you will successfully accomplish. And that's going to make you then be able to get back into that place of confidence that we originally talked about. So before I sign off, I wanted to share some recommended reading with you. These are a couple of great books that you might want to take a quick screenshot of or just jot down. Self-Compassion, The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself is a great read by Kristen Neff. I've read it multiple times, highly recommended. She's a leading researcher and pioneer in the field of self-compassion, and her book explores how practicing self-compassion can enhance your resilience and your self-confidence. That's a really good one. Another one you've probably heard of, maybe read before, really famous, is called Mindset. It's by Carol Dweck. And it really is about the growth mindset and about how our abilities can be developed and honed at any age or stage. You know, the idea of neuroplasticity, that you're not fully formed at like age 20. We're still growing into our 90s. You can always grow. Also, The Confidence Gap by Russ Harris, excellent book, and explores more the concept of confidence, and it's going to give you some practical strategies that you can implement. And then there's some researchers that have done great work on that. You can, maybe Google some of their case studies, but, Al Bandura, as a guy who taught at Stanford while I was there, and my roommate actually used to take some of his classes and spoke so highly of him, but he's done a lot of research about this. So these researchers are fantastic and just highly recommended. Okay, so I would like to end today by letting you know that I put the outline for this talk together for you while I was at an airport where I was waiting to board what may have been my 200th flight since the year 2017. I had resolved to leave no stone unturned in my quest to overcome my fear of flying, and I was really thinking about that today, this morning, getting ready to speak to you. I was thinking about how the thing in me that never faltered was the belief that there was a solution out there somewhere. And that even though for all those years, like over 20 years, I didn't have the solution, I couldn't find the solution, I believed that there was a solution, and that if I just kept looking for it, that I would find it. And so when the obvious choices, and I tried so many things during those years, I sought therapy, I took fear of flying courses, I white knuckled it, as I mentioned, I took Xanax. I mean, there was a lot of things I tried, but when none of those actually helped or improved my situation, I did find some solutions in places that would have seemed a lot less likely for me when I was younger. So ultimately for me, it was a combination of life coaching and hypnotherapy that revealed to me where the core problem was that had sort of made me unable to fly with ease and comfort. And for me, it turned out that the death of my friend, coupled with everything else that had happened, made me feel that I wasn't worthy of a life of travel and adventure. And that was the life I most wanted. So in my subconscious, I was putting a wall, like a block up. And it took the coaching and the hypnotherapy to discover that. I no longer believed at that time that the world was a safe place with my best interest at heart, and I didn't trust myself to keep myself safe. But through the coaching and the hypnotherapy, I was able to work through both of those issues over time. It's actually one of the things that inspired me to become a coach. And at last, I was able to recognize that I had been blocking myself from this activity due to those feelings of guilt and unworthiness. And I was able to then see and correct a lot of my own thought pattern errors and interrupt a lot of my own negative thinking that I've been honest with you about today. So, to regain the confidence that I needed to fly, I had to rebuild my own self confidence, my self esteem, my sense of self worth. And I did it using a lot of the strategies that I've shared with you here today. And once I was able to process through those, flying became easy and relaxed for me again. And in just about 7 years, I've traveled all over the world with my family, even during the pandemic, which was frankly kind of a stressful time to fly because my family was literally at one point the only people in LAX about to board a flight. It was a ghost town. We had a mandatory international flight. We had to deal with some urgent family business abroad, but it was a crazy time to be flying, and I was able to do it. I have now flown through really intense turbulence and people having medical emergencies on the plane and endless screaming babies and alarms set off by accident and any number of things that 10 years ago would have been incredibly panic inducing for me. And I was able to do it with ease and grace. And it used to be that I would sweat profusely and I would hear ringing in my ears and I would shake and I would cry and I would nearly pass out on the flights. And I even used to ask the steward or stewardess to hold my hand sometimes or like sit with me and tell me what the noises were. I mean, I know that all of this is nothing compared to the trauma and the events that each of you have endured. So please know that I don't mean for a second to compare this little thing that I had with what you've gone through, but I really hope that if you practice some of the strategies that I've shared with you today, that it will be even just a little bit helpful to you on your own healing journey. And I feel really, really honored to have been here to speak with you. So I'm going to close with a question for you. And so here is my question for you. And I would be so grateful if you would all join in the discussion now and share your wisdom. I would love to know if any of you have tried any of the strategies here that I've shared today, or maybe even more importantly, do you have other strategies that have worked well for you? And if so, would you be willing to share them with us here today? So that's what I have for you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we shared this last month, but for people who weren't able to join us and aren't aware, the Integrative Services Program offered through the Resiliency and Justice Center are now available to anyone impacted by any mass violence incident. So even if you were not there physically, again, this is for family members, for survivors themselves, for friends, for first responders. These programs are all now open to anyone. And the programs include our Heart Peer Support Program. There's a meditation and mindfulness program, trauma recovery yoga or TRY, art therapy, and equine demonstrations. The only one that is in person is the equine demonstrations. Those are in Las Vegas. I know that that's a destination for a lot of people. So if you happen to be visiting Las Vegas and would like to see the equine therapy demonstration, by all means, please feel free. They also do intensives. So it would be, Jack, is it 3 days for the intensive? Do you know? Or Alice?
Yes. 3
Okay.
days for the intensive.
Yeah.
So if that's something that you wanted to go to Vegas for, Terry does equine assisted EMDR, which a lot of people have found super, super helpful. That portion is not free. And I don't know the cost, but that's something that she would be willing to talk to you about.
I think there's some coverage through victims of crime compensation. I know for Nevada, and it may be for other states as well, if I believe.
Okay, thank you. So if you want any more information or want to register for one of these programs, the link is there. And it's also something that we do share on the First Tuesdays with Heart Facebook group. I'll leave that there for just a second. This is just an example calendar for May. So anything everything that's highlighted is something that is open to anyone impacted by any mass violence incident. We do ask that if it's event specific, that you not attend. We do have support groups for Route and UNLV, but everything else is available to anyone impacted. So we just want to share some additional support with you. If you'd like to be paired with a heart mentor, you can go to the Resiliency and Justice Center's website at resiliencyandjustice.org/heart. You can either call the disaster distress line. Their safe space site is amazing. And also the Survivors of Mass Violence page, which we've been talking about. I definitely recommend that just for the additional support for people. And there's also the National Mass Violence Center. They have a lot of resources, tips, and things like that for anyone impacted by mass violence. And as Michael mentioned, there's also the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, which you can call or text. Real quick, next month, our next First Tuesdays of Heart will be Tuesday, June 4th at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. The topic is Understanding Resilience, How Anger Plays a Part in Your Story and Your Healing, with Boston Marathon survivor and keynote speaker Manya Chilinsky. Alice and I had a chance to meet with her a couple weeks ago, and I'm excited to have her. She's very passionate about the feelings of all survivors, not just those who were there. So any of the programs you can register through Eventbrite at firsttuesdays.eventbrite.com. And again, this is something that I post on all the survivor pages. I'll be posting just a reminder of who's there and that. So we will be posting the video for this, for the presentation portion. Andrea's portion will be posted later this week once we have our IT guy prettied up a little bit. And I will, at the same time, I'll be posting Andrea's handout that she provided for us. And it has the strategies as well as a way to contact her. If you have any questions, if you want to listen to her podcast, anything like that. So if you have any questions, comments, topic suggestions, this is for all of us. So if there's a topic you'd like us to talk about, please let us know. You know, we've done a brain dump with several survivors, and I'd love to do it with you as well, because we all think about different things and we all think differently. So there might be something that we haven't thought of that would be incredibly important to talk about. So as I've mentioned, if you'd like to join our Facebook page, First Tuesdays with Heart, please do. We have people who are posting inspirational and positive messages, and then we also have all the videos from our prior presentations. So we just wanted to thank you guys so much for coming, and we really appreciate your time and hope to see you next month.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea.